Hi, I'm Sahana,
I'm Meghana, and this is Shankari.
our co-host and co-producer. Today we're going to be discussing the story Ash by Paavannan, sir.
Okay, so this story is one that I translated for like a short summary of the story. It's about this man named Velu, whose dad has just died, and he wants to honor his dad's last wish of basically having his ashes deposited in the Kashi. However, his family's like not in the best financial state, so his wife Sundari sees there's no point in like getting the ashes to the Kashi. She's like, why can't we just put it in the local river? And it was kind of like, well, this is the last wishes. So they obviously have a big argument over that. And Velu's trying his best to like get the funds over like several months. He like tries to collect it from anywhere he knows possible, going to his employer to ask for some money, asking his friends for some loans. The reality is like every time he gathers like some money, like some kind of issue comes up in the house, his kids fall sick, something breaks. So he has to end up spending the money towards that. And so, we want to continue there.
Yeah, so in his life as a householder, he has to continually spend this money. And it eventually culminates in him going into this big spat with his wife and storming out of the house. And he ends up at a train station, Takashi. He's like, I'm gonna figure out how to get there somewhere or the other. So he wants to try just going on the train without getting a ticket because that's a thing some people do. But he's too scared to end up doing that, and he just ends up going to a local's like park near his area and like falling asleep on a bench there out of just exhaustion from the day's events. And in that park, he meets a guard who works at that park. This guard is like this older man who has had a lot of conflicts in his life, but has ended up at peace with these conflicts that have arisen in his life. And from this old man, he kind of learns the lesson of like what should he really value and like why getting his father's ashes to Kashi wasn't the most important thing after all.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Yeah. In the park that he's at, I think it's a lake called Ulcer Lake. So basically, like Sahana said, it's kind of like the first thing that we got from this book was that you kind of need to like appreciate what you have. In that like Velu itself, you want to continue this?
Yeah. Velu, like he has like a family. He has like a wife that he needs to take care of. He's like the person who earns money for his entire family. But when he's so hyper fixated on getting the funds to go to Kashi, he ends up creating conflict within his family. And he is like begrudged about having to do his like duty as a householder, right? Like he doesn't feel content in that when that is his duty. That's what he was meant to do, at least in this moment of his life. So he should appreciate that instead of feeling so discontent about everything. Like you were saying earlier, his father never would have wanted to him to go to Kashi and drop his ashes there if he'd known what kind of discontent it would sow.
Exactly. Like in summer throughout the story, like especially the beginning, Bailey was really never like in his life gotten like friendly with his wife. Not friendly, but they always have these like kind of arguments. And his dad's like he's really put off by that. He's kind of like, why do you guys fight all the time? Can't you just have like one day with peace? If his dad knew that like getting his ashes to Kashi would cause such like argument within the family, he wouldn't have even wanted it in the first place. Which I guess kind of like brings you to the second point, which is like Belu himself gets so lost in the premise of I need to get my dad's ashes to Kashi that he loses like the true meaning of like his dad's wishes, the true meaning of like what it's like to be a family. He kind of gets lost in like the materialistic value of I have to bring my dad's ashes to the Kashi. That he doesn't see like the underlying meaning there, where he's like his dad really would have been happy resting anywhere as long as his family was whole, as long as he cared about his family. And I think you can actually see this with the guard, where you can see like the first theme of like kind of like appreciating what you have, as well as like not getting lost in subjects. Because the guard he's a guard at this lake called, like I said, Ulcer Lake, right? And it's shown that the guard actually has this whole backstory where he used to be like a farmer, and the river was essentially his life. Like that river supported him and his family.
Yeah.
Like it fully gave him like a way. It gave him his job, his career. All of that came from the river.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he had to move out because none of his family could like continue his job, I think. and so then he had to like get out of the area and come here.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he's not like moping around about it. He's not like extremely depressed about it. He's like, I have a lake here, like that's water, this is water. Like at
Like
the end
I
of the day, it's all
found,
the same water.
yes, it's like contentment can be found anywhere. It's not about the place at all. It's just about finding happiness in that.
Yeah.
Like, and then on the meantime, Belu can't find happiness within his life. Like he like blames his circumstances for everything going wrong when he could just find contentment in what is like existent.
Yeah, yeah. Like I think actually what happened to Vale in the book is that like instead of he was like under the guise of like this is from my father, like my father wanted his ashes to go to the Kashi, so I have to get them there. But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, I think he himself was looking for like a form of happiness, like for a form of I finally did it, like I finally have something to be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
That he was doing it for his own happiness instead of like looking for happiness in his children or his wife and his family or like even in like the common everyday activities around them. He
Mm-hmm.
thought his only like sense of happiness would come from getting his ashes to the Kashi. And I think actually like there's a part in the park where he's talking to the guard and the guard's like, hey, have you ever brought your kids to this lake? And he goes, he's kind of embarrassed, he's like, no, I haven't. And that kind of makes him think like I haven't really been like paying attention to the things around me because I've been so focused on this like larger issue that I
Mm-hmm.
have.
Like there's two things he could do, right? He could either get his dad's ashes to the Kashi, following his own selfish will and disregarding what his family needs. Or he could drop his dad's ashes somewhere local, and even though he's not following his dad's wishes to the letter, he'd keep his family whole and content, and also like he'd be doing it without selfishness because he knows he's doing it for the other people in his life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about getting his ashes to Kashi at all, like we keep saying. It's just about finding peace.
I know, and then that is yeah, that is basically the point of the book, of the story, I guess. And like near the end, you can really the author I think does like a really good job of like subtly conveying like his dad was found peace and he found peace because near the end of the story, kind of connects to the theme of like the guard moving away from his village, but the water being the same in the lake and in the river
Mm-hmm.
because Velu ends up depositing his dad's ashes in the lake water.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see the underlying current of it doesn't matter if it's a lake water or if it's Kashi because I'm doing it with respect for my father in my heart and knowing that my family will be better off if I use those expenses for something else.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I finally gotten my mind off of this issue. I can actually pay attention to those around me and spend time with my kids or my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And even though you sympathize with Vale, there are parts of the book where I was actually angry at his wife for not understanding his plight.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, there are bigger things to like worry about than this. Like there's more things he could be paying attention to because he's just in a way he's harming himself because he's only getting anger and sadness whenever he thinks about his dad's ashes not going to Kashi. But then if he just lets it go and thinks about the fact that his dad would be proud of him and happy no matter what, like just as long as he was happy, then he could have been doing so many other things.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's like the premise of the story, right? Like finding contentment wherever you are, and also just not focusing on this larger premise and rather like not focusing on the surface level, taking his dad's ashes to Kashi, and then and rather focusing on the subtext,
Yeah,
which was
exactly.
to find peace.
Mhm.
So I think both of those things really was what the story was.
Yeah, and it truly
teaching.
does. Like, yeah. It was like you said. It was that was what the story was teaching
Mhm.
about, and the author like manages to deliver it in such like a beautiful way.
Paavannan sir really like everything has a purpose. The guard's purpose, his wife's purpose, the ashes, the different water bodies. Every single symbol in the story has a purpose. It's very beautifully written, and especially when you were translating it and I was reading over your translation, I was able to derive that much more meaning from the story because we were like analyzing the story so deeply.
I think that like wait, one thing is that like the way I think what's special about his writing style is like the dialogue manages to convey like especially the conversations between the guard and Bailey. You think it's like just normal everyday conversation, but when you look a little deeper, it's actually conveying a lot about like finding peace in your surroundings and not getting too lost in like one thing and upsetting your whole life about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good symbolism in the story. Yeah, so definitely would recommend giving the story a read. If you can read it in the original Tamil, that's great. And if you need to read the translation, there are translations out there, including Meghna's. So would recommend reading, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching.
Bye.
Bye.